Hey guys, what's happening? Grincherz here, back with another video. This will be my anti-meta deck tech number 2 with Midrange Reva. This is a deck I've been playing now for a little over a week, and I've had a lot of success with it on the ladder. I think that a lot of the reasons has to do with what I'm playing against, and not necessarily because this is a new archetype or anything. It's actually an archetype that's been around for a little while. Other players have made it more popular. I think Dragall would be someone who you could definitely picture with similar cards in their deck. I've also seen a few other people utilize this style of Reva, but no one's ever really, gone over this type of tech, and I wanted to do that today. Now, one of the things that I love about this deck is its ability to be resilient throughout all stages of the game, while also having a very convincing control over the late game as far as damage output. So, without further ado, let's bring up the list. I'll just go over the creatures first. You'll notice that we're running a higher count of creatures than spells, and it's actually quite the low curve. Now this, you're like, whoa, that doesn't seem like a mid-range deck. Well, it is really, because of the way that we are playing our spells and opting for a less control-based mindset and more of a tempo mindset. We get lots of value out of the few number of minions that we are playing in the early game. My favorite addition to the deck is definitely Shiro and Battle Pando. This combo, and among others, really makes for the early game to just, stand out, as opposed to other Songhai decks, where the typical Songhai deck that you see nowadays has been like Aggro Reva, and they play a lot of Tuskboar and Chakri Avatar and stuff like that. 2-drops that are just not very resilient. They tend to get answered very easily. Chakri in particular, one Dispel and he just got a 1/2. Now, while he does have great combo potential in the late game, that does nothing for you in the early game, and it requires multiple cards to really get him going in the early game. And with that damage not going to face, it sometimes ends up being like a wasted resource. So I've gone a different route and included early game that dodges a lot of what's popular on the ladder in terms of removal. Now, you're thinking, well, Shiro's a 1/4. Certainly that doesn't mean it's completely immune. And you're right. Certain things like natural selection definitely still can target this. That's nothing new. But I would much rather have them natural selection a Shiro than, say, a 2/3 or something like that, like a Lantern Fox on the next turn. That would be much worse, right? So the thing about having Shiro in this deck as the only 2-drop in particular, the other one being Blood Tear and Katara, and I'll go over that in a second, is that it plays around things like Tempo Linar and Fae, who will commonly have cards in their deck like Blood Tear Alchemist and Arclight Sentinel. And if you've been playing against any Tempo Liner right now, you know that one of their favorite openers when you play your 2-drop is to Blood Tear it on the mana tile, then play Arclight Sentinel in the middle, and bam, they've got a 2/4 and a 2/1, and you lost your minion, which isn't good. It's really hard to deal with, and if they throw a slow on after that, you're in big trouble. So what this aims to do is to dodge this effect in particular, as well as the common Hearth Sister, Blood Tear, Snow Chaser type of thing that you can see from Fae as well. So when you're dodging those particular high tempo openers, you're actually doing a lot more than you think. You're forcing them to take a slight step back so you don't get value out of your minion and they don't lose trades, and maybe go for something that's not as strong, like playing Sojourner by itself, and you get your 2-drop, which is ideal. Now, you say, well, if that's so good, why don't you also play other 1/4s or more 2/3s and stuff? And it's like, yes, I could do that. However, this deck is so reactive in a lot of ways that I don't have to actually play a 2-drop in a lot of cases, which is a common case for Songhai in particular. You'll sometimes see them walk up and play an artifact or skip their turn entirely, and then turn 2 suddenly Lantern Fox, Inner Focus, Katara, Blood Tear, something crazy. And that's why I have Blood Tear in the deck and Battle Pando, because Battle Pando with an Inner Focus straight up kills a 2/3, while also dealing 1 damage to everything around it. You can also go to the General and do 1 damage to everything. These types of plays are really good turn 2 going first, or just turn 1 and going second and utilizing other effects. Lots of 3-drops for going second is very important for Songhai, because they benefit from not expending their entire hand in the first 2 turns. And while some strategies definitely can benefit in that way, this deck is not. So oftentimes I will hold Blood Tear in my opening hand going first rather than playing it if I don't have Spelljammer or Duelyst, because I know if they play a minion on the mana tile, I may be able to get away with just Phoenix Firing it or Blood Tearing and punching it, and then holding out for a more tempo-oriented play, or baiting them into a wider range of effects with Battle Pando Inner Focus. Another common keep is just Inner Focus and Killing Edge, because I know that on turn 3, going first or second, I'm going to have Bloodborne spell to summon a Heartseeker, Inner Focus, Killing Edge, so I got that in my back pocket, and that's pretty hard to deal with. So for draw in the deck, we are opting for Lantern Fox, Sojourner, and Spelljammer. Lantern Fox is often overlooked as draw because people say, well, it's just putting Phoenix Fires in your hand. Well, you can replace Phoenix Fire. I know. That's a foreign concept to a lot of people. A lot of newer Songhai players tend to think that they'll lose the game if they don't hold on to Phoenix Fires for a blowout. And that's just not the case. Phoenix Fire does not put anything on the board, and it's only 3 damage. And we're not playing 4 Winds Magi, we're not playing Blood Rage Mask, we're not playing Crescent Spear. There's a lot of things that aren't increasing the value, or there's nothing in the deck that's increasing the Phoenix Fire's inherent value. So to us, it's just a slight tempo card. It can hit 2 drops, or it is a decent wombo finisher. But using this to put cards in your hand so you can replace is also a form of draw, and I think a lot of people overlook that when deck building. Sojourner, I'm a big fan of it right now. There's a lot of dispel targets in my deck. A lot. If this gets dispelled, it's still a 1/5, which is pretty good. We can, throw a Killing Edge on it, or we have Shiro that can help continually buff it, and it still has decent breakpoints with Blood Tear Alchemist and Battle Pando type plays, and our General. So Dispel on this is great bait. I rate it 8 out of 8, and you can get a lot of value out of this card if they don't dispel it, which is great, so we don't have to waste our turn later on playing effects like Heaven's Eclipse that can often, draw you. You just get cards you can't play at that time. And without Mana Vortex, the value of Heaven's Eclipse has diminished quite severely. And we're not playing a lot of minions that benefit from a Heaven's Eclipse. Like, we're not playing Hammond because of the control meta. Enfeeble, Punish, those types of cards from Cassava and Fae have really made the risk reward for playing high cost or high stat minions with low tempo value, meaning low impact on the board the turn they're played, like Hammond, much more risky and not really beneficial. So we're really trying to get value out of just about every single minion. Katara is the other turn 1 play that I chose. This I'm fine playing sometimes if I have a Mist Dragon Seal or Juxtaposition in my hand and a Killing Edge. That's like, okay, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to play it. Now, I will always, against factions that are commonly known to play Saberspine Tiger, I will always try to position this out of Saberspine Tiger's reach. Like Lionar, for example, I will position this either along the starting wall or in the corner and just telegraph the fact that I have Misdragon Seal or Juxtaposition. If I feel that it doesn't matter if they know or not, I just have to save this minion and have to go in for that value. It's also commonly dropped with 3-drop on turn 1 going second if my opponent had a weaker turn 1, like Cryptographer or something like that, right? So something along the lines of a minion that doesn't threaten to outvalue me. So definitely a great card because of its low cost and its extreme value with Inner Focus. It's actually one of the only minions that gets more damage than 3 from Inner Focus. The other one being Gorehorn, and I can't think of Scarlet Viper does, but she's a little too slow. Inner Focus him is 4 damage every single time, and that with backstab, and that's just good value, and it makes lethals and combo plays later on in the game much easier to have such a low mana target. So Battle Panda I went over a little bit, but I'll go in depth. This card single-handedly wins many matches. People lose their minds. Like, and I'm just saying they do all they can to avoid this thing from getting too much value, meaning they will smack it with their face, they'll trade something into it, like it'll kill a 2/3 and it'll do 4 damage to the general in the process if that's how they deal with it. So it's not a bad card to just play sometimes. I will often slam this over Lantern Fox because if it gets dispelled, it's still a 2/4, so I get to do things with it on the board, but it also just gets more value immediately, as opposed to Lantern Fox requiring you to play 2 more mana in order to get value with the Phoenix Fire. Also, against decks like Lilith and Fae or Kara, or even sometimes Starhorn, where they're playing lots of 1 health minions, like Blood Tear Alchemist. You got Abyssal Crawler in Cassiva. You got Flameblood in Starhorn, and then the Walls and Wraithlings. It's just, right now, rather than run something like Ghost Lightning and the spell package, you can just run this minion and get a lot more value while also having the added effect of going face in the process, because you can hit the general and then do 1 damage to everything else. So it also, since it only hits enemy targets, it doesn't have that downside of being Scorn, where it could clear our own blood Heartseekers. And yeah, it's just all around an amazing card that really didn't get a whole lot of chance to shine in previous metas, because Key Beholder was the go-to 3-drop from the Shimzar package. And I don't blame people. Back when Mana Vortex was a thing, Key Beholder, it could buy you a turn and you could draw a lot of cards, and there was just a lot of great things, and it being a ranged minion meant that a lot of people had trouble dealing with it. Well, this day and age, we have a lot more threats, or we have a lot more removal on the board, and frankly, denying movement and backing away from my opponent has felt a lot worse than in previous metas. So, regardless of how good Key Beholder can be, I've decided to go with Battle Pando, so I have that added utility of AoE damage, and forcing the opponent to play very silly around it is just great. I'm really happy with it. It's performed very well in this meta. Lantern Fox staple, we went over the card drop, Sojourner, Spelljammer. The other kind of an oddball is Duelyst. Now, I had a few choices when choosing 4-drops. I wanted 4-drops in the deck because of our somewhat weaker openers. Now, while they're strong, I wanted 4-drops that curving into, if we take the mana tile, turn 2, or just being able to play on turn 2 going second, that would require, or that would give us a lot of benefits, and the opponent is forced to react or completely ignore and overextend their play, overreach. And by that I mean sometimes people can't deal with this, so rather than trying to kill it and then kill the tombstone or displace it or dispel it. They'll go face very heavily, and they underestimate their ability to they get overconfident, I guess. They think that the tombstone won't affect them that much. They think, well, it'll be just a 0-10. I'll be able to chew through that fast enough. Well, most of the time that's just not true. Most of the time I find that the tombstone actually just gets too much value in the long run. It lets me set up my board around it. It lets me protect some of my minions that otherwise wouldn't be protectable. It also prevents the opponent from going face in a lot of times. And if it comes out soon enough and it sticks around, it sets up Zendos very easily. And, kind of leading the opponent's general around the board with a carrot on it, like a carrot on a stick, with Zendo is kind of hilarious. And tombstones can protect Zendo while we force the opponent to hit things like Sojourner or into damaging targets with backstab, you know what I mean? Or just using Zendo himself. So the synergy between Tombstone and Zendo, I find, is remarkable, and I've really grown to enjoy it. The next edition of this deck may involve me rethinking certain numbers and actually going with 3 Duelyst and 3 Spelljammer, but right now I'm very happy with the numbers on where they're at, because Duelyst isn't always useful. It can't be inner-focused. It's kind of it doesn't do anything immediately. It doesn't have that provoke effect, so sometimes it's not that great, but on curve it's almost always a good play. So really happy with it. And we went over Sendo, and Spelljammer is our other draw card of choice. It's 3/5 body, often gets overlooked. It'll often not be able to be dealt with immediately, and with cards like Juxtaposition and Midrange Seal, that is great, because you play a Spelljammer out of reach, the opponent doesn't deal with it, they want the card draw. You run it away, Jux something of theirs away, and then Killing Edge it, and bam, blammo. Now it's drawing you cards and dealing damage, and they have to suffer the card advantage loss and kill it. So it's a win-win. Contemplated 3 of these, but it's felt pretty good. Like I said, the numbers have felt okay. Changing that might be something I do in the future, but for now it's been really good. Let's go over the spells. So you'll notice that we're not running Onyx Bear Seal, and that is because the control meta that we're in with cards like Punish and Enfeeble have all but eliminated Divine Bond Argion, which is probably this type of deck's worst matchup, I would say. Where if they play an Iron Cliff and we don't have Onyx Bear Seal, we're forced to waste several resources into killing it, or if they have Aegis Barrier, we can't juxtaposition it away. That's always been an anti-Songhai strategy. Is like, I'm going to play Iron Cliff, I'm going to play Aegis Barrier, they're not going to be able to deal with it, and they'll die. And that's just not the case right now. There's not a whole lot of people that have the stones to play those types of decks, and even if they do, it's likely that we'll just out-tempo them, given the board that we're running in the early game. That Iron Cliff might just be their only card on the board when it comes out, and we have Juxtaposition or Backstabs for that. So it's not that bad. We have a lot of good ways to deal with those types of decks, but that's really just not what I've been seeing on the ladder anyways. So I don't feel that it's a worry that we need to address. It's not a problem that for us right now. If you suddenly are in gold and you're just seeing a ton of Argions playing this type of thing or something like that, I would suggest running Onyx Bear Seal. And if you had to cut cards for that, I think a Midrange Seal could potentially go. If you don't have Spiral, that's fine. Spiral is kind of just my flavor card. It probably gets played at I'd say a 5% of games total. So it's there for situations that I can set up, and it's there as a YOLO top deck finisher if you get, if your back's against the wall. It's my linchpin, you know what I mean? It's my trump card. It's not necessary to the deck. It's definitely replaceable, And Onyx Bear Seal could fit nicely into this spot, and you could even cut a minion somewhere if you want to for a second one for consistency's sake. If you see Aegis Barrier a lot, consider running Lightbender or something, or Repulsor Beast is not even that bad if you're on a budget and you don't have some of these cards and you are seeing big minions a lot, big provokes. Repulsor Beast is not a bad card. Juxtaposition is your go-to, but Repulsor Beast could be okay. If it's provoke minions in particular and you happen to have Hallowed Grovekeeper, hey, it works, right? Hallowed Grovekeeper also has that cool property of killing frenzy minions, which happens to target Mechazor. So, if you got that, consider it. It doesn't not work in this deck. This deck is very flexible because most of the power lies in the early game control and the tempo that we bring, and just finishing with cards like Killing Edge and Inner Focus and Zendo. You don't really, as long as you get from point A to point B, you can kind of tech for whatever you're seeing. Don't feel like you need to lock yourself into this deck and say, well, I'm losing to this, and then I go, hey man, I try to tell you, you can change a couple of things here to help you up with those matchups. So really like this deck, just because it I'm going to go over the matchups here. It's very strong against Magmar in particular, Vath in particular. Burn Starhorn it kind of goes even with, but I'd say we have the edge if you are competent. They can sometimes get the nuts if you didn't do enough damage, right? They can also run natural selections, and if they chain them, it can be bad. We're not running healing, so got to be a little careful with our general in that matchup. But since we have ranged threats and Zendo, we have a lot of good advantages over them, and Battle Pando can target a lot of their things. So Provoke is also nice. It has a great matchup against Tempo Lionar, the deck that doesn't run Iron Cliffs but runs lots of fast cards. Really good against them, just because as soon as Zendo comes out against a Tempo Lionar, they have to start playing very inefficiently, and they don't do well with provokes like Duelyst, and our Shiro, like I said, dodges a lot of their early game removal, and so we just have very good answers for their early game. Phoenix Fire Punch killed the Silverguard Knight, all that good stuff. And if they have to kill our Spelljammer, then they are going to be on the back pedal. So lots of good ways to deal with Tempo Liner. We also have a great matchup against Faye, mostly because her early game minions, her natural minions, are all pretty bad. And we have great ways to deal with decks that want to get value out of like Sojourner and stuff like that, and we can also punish their their ability to come to the middle of the board. We're able to punish that and start locking them down with Zendo and stuff like that. The only thing that we can't deal with in particular is Shroud, the card that makes them go invulnerable. We don't have Dispel. So that is probably the only problem card in that matchup. But as long as you don't extend yourself into a situation where they play Enfeeble and you lose your whole board, you're pretty okay. We deal with Jack's True Sight because we have Battle Pando. We deal with Walls very well. There's just no real problem cards in specific that we lose to. It's just a matter of, they either answer everything absolutely perfectly and draw cards, which is unlikely, or they lose. So I would also say that we have a very good matchup in the mirror match, just because Blood Tier Alchemist, Battle Pando, those are staple cards that kind of punish Reva just for being Reva, because her Bloodborne spell, alongside some of the minions in the early game just being very low health pools and stuff. We get to trade very efficiently, and they hate dealing with Sojourner and Duelyst. So good ways to deal with the mirror match. The only thing you might have to watch out for is your opponent playing too well around your reach, which could be like they back into corner 4 wins, so you got to be ready for 4 wins and stuff like that. And you don't want to just punch them every turn because if they pull out Zendo before you or something like that, you may end up in a situation that you can't deal with just because you lowered your health pool and accelerated the clock. That's not really how this deck plays out. You're not punching every turn just because you can or you want to kill them real fast. This deck is more of a, should I punch them? Well, what could they play next turn? Would that be bad? Kind of thing. You gotta weigh your options every turn, and punching isn't always ideal. So manage your health and just keep the cards for what you expect them to play, and you'll do very well. The only problem matchup, like I said, was Aegis Barrier, Divine Bond, Liner, and Cassava can be tricky sometimes, just because if they get the perfect curve and you weren't able to pressure them fast enough, or you couldn't answer Kalino, or they punished every single thing you played, and you didn't find any of your draw cards and all those other baby rage things, Sometimes Cassava can just be, too good, and that's just kind of how that deck is in general. But we definitely have the tools to deal with her. We have Zendo to take away her positioning. We have lots of high value inner focus targets to gain control of the board early on, which is something that really punishes her. And if you get a good killing edge combo off early, it's very hard for her to catch up. So lots of damage against her, and try to limit her options. Try to make Revenant not good enough sometimes, you know what I mean? Locking her down with Duelyst can be great. But overall, I'd say it's probably a 55 to 45, slightly favored for her, maybe. Just because Kalino and we're not running Onyx Bear Seal, but otherwise, I think you can, with good insight of what your options are, you can definitely outplay them in a lot of ways. So, yeah, that's the deck. I do have a game prepared for you guys. So, 1 second here. Alright. Now, I was not actually S-rank when I played this game. This game is from a few days ago, but I thought it was it showcased a lot of the deck's more interesting cards that may raise questions. So, yeah, we were both diamond at this time. So, the matchup's Fae. We're going first. The first thing you have to consider is, well, what could her opening be? You think Gravity Well, probably a Sojourner, or something of that nature. They could have the Hearth Sister plus Blood Tear plus Snow Chaser type of thing that you see some people do. Either way, this whole hand, everything looks pretty okay. Phoenix Fire and Punch lets me deal with a card like Sojourner. Juxtaposition is a great tool in the early game, particularly because we have this Sojourner that we plan on playing soon, so we keep our hand count up. And Blood Tear to help us remove things like the wall. Shiro being our most ideal opener, this is probably one of the best hands I could ask for going first. The only thing I might have wanted more out of this would be Juxtaposition or Phoenix Fire potentially being a Deoltas or a Spelljammer, which I'm not really too worried about it. We already have the Sojourner, so I'm just going to keep everything. The only reason I would want a 4-drop is if they went up and played Sojourner, I could take Mana Tile and then go and place my 4-drop to block it, and it would potentially be too hard. That's a little loud. That's really loud, actually. What the hell? Okay. So, Shiro, no replace, like for the options that I went over. And I believe they actually opened Gravity Well, which is, something that we were prepared to deal with. And one thing about Fae lately is you either get the aggro Fae sometimes, or you get the new Jack's True Sight Fae, or you get the very heavy control Meltdown Fae. Now, identifying which one it is rather difficult since they all run pretty much the same shell. You see lots of Enfeebles, lots of the Shrouds, the Frigid Coronas, that type of thing. So just try and play around all of them at once on the turns that you like have to. Like their 6 mana turn, try to find that Battle Pando, right? Try to have that just in case they were to play Jack's True Sight or something like that. So we see the Gravity Well, Frigid Corona, Snow Chaser. That's quite the opener, right? It's denying us the access to this mana tile because our Shiro is provoked. We are stunned, and Snow Chaser is in a very annoying position since it cannot be attacked because we are provoked, and it also threatens anything we want to play on our backside to, say, like stay away from Fae. So I think sometimes you'll see Snow Chaser just played directly in front, but I kind of agree with this positioning overall, because if they were to play Snow Chaser up here and I played like Key Beholder or something, well, Key Beholder would naturally deal with it already, but if he was playing some sort of thing like Lightbender or something, or if he has a card that needed the immediate access to this back area, or he just felt that he could Hearth Sister his Snow Chaser, it gives him minion access, which I like if I were to play something back here. So now for me, I'm all about this middle board. We're stunned. This mana tile's there. I can't really do anything about it. The only thing I can do is prevent him from killing my Shiro directly with the Snow Chaser and his general attack. And I don't feel the need to replace anything. I debated about replacing Katara, but if I found an Inner Focus, I would just be very sad to not have this card. I want a threat that is activatable, and since I'm in this position, I would rather see a couple more cards cycle into my hand before doing away with my option text, like Phoenix Fire deals with 2/3s, etc. Or if he plays, Razorback this turn, that's a 4/3, and we get value for that. So being mindful of what the opponent could do in this next turn, I wanted this Phoenix Fire, and I thought that this was a good target for Inner Focus should I draw it. I know that I'm going to draw cards out of this, or it's going to get dispelled. He actually does something a little interesting. I don't agree with the positioning here because he kind of gives up this mana tile. I think if he wanted to do this, he should have just played the Hearth Sister on the Mana Spring. Now, he wouldn't get the mana tile that way, but he would definitely deny it from me. So we replace one of the Phoenix Fires. And now my thought is, boy, I can play 3 cards out of my hand and clear his board. All but 2 Gravity Wells. We're going to do that by utilizing the Duelyst on the mana tile, blood tiering the Gravity Well, because it lets me kill the Hearth Sister, draw a card. Now, ordinarily, under different circumstances, I would definitely always advise to try and draw the card first, but in this circumstance, I actually don't want to. I want to do it last because I really want to get this Duelyst on the board, and I want to protect the Duelyst versus the Blood Tier Alchemist, because if he has Dancing Blades, that just deals with the Duelyst, and I don't really have a way to deal with Dancing Blades. So we're going to see how this turn plays out, and I'll even be dealing with this Snow Chaser as well. So positioning the Blood Tier to play around Dancing Blades on the Duelyst. And we're just going to leave the Sojourner right here. Now, the only downside of this play is that it puts the Sojourner out of position, but Sojourner does draw cards when it attacks walls, because it draws a card when it deals damage. So it's perfectly fine just chilling down here. If he wants to get rid of it once and for all this turn, so it doesn't just get infinite value on these walls, he has to extend under the reach of all of my minions and put himself at the mercy of my surround against this wall, potentially. So this is a fine position. We also juxed that Snow Chaser to the middle row because that would deactivate its infiltrate effect, and therefore it wouldn't go back to his hand, and I would not be seeing another Snow Chaser next turn. Now he kind of does something that I guess he felt he had to, but if he had other options, I might have considered those. Like if he had the option to play minions this turn and maybe use a Chromatic Cold or something, I might have gone for that line of play. But I can definitely see the argument for just getting rid of the whole board in one. It gets rid of the draw, gets rid of the damage on the Duelyst, even deals with the 2/1. Punching me because he's slightly ahead in health. It's not altogether a bad play. It's just that now he has to deal with Tombstone, and this is what I was talking about. Is that oftentimes you'll see people sort of underestimate tombstones or overestimate their capabilities of dealing with it. So now he's provoked by a 0/10. I'm going to play the Katara up here because in case he had Aspect of the Fox, which would be he could use Aspect of the Fox on the Gravity Well, run it up, kill the 1/3 for free, so we're protecting it. We're also positioning the Tombstone up here just to play around other positional based effects like Aspect of the Mountains and stuff. So keeping ourselves away from this and setting up to do some damage with this Katara. He has kind of an interesting turn. He's kind of realizing the predicament he put himself in by taking center tile next to where my Tombstone would spawn. Because he moved up and hit me, and the Tombstone died right next to my general, he was always going to be provoked by this. So I don't think he quite realized that, which is a very common misplay by players. Even myself, sometimes I get myself into this situation. I underestimate the Tombstone's value completely. I think, well, it'll be okay. I have a lot of out-of-hand things. I have more tools. Well, if his answer was Chromatic Cold to deal with this, and now there's another one on the board, well, he should probably get rid of this before he gets rid of just the provoke on this. So, pretty good value out of our deal with this. He plays Concealing Shroud and Chromatic Colds the deal thus. And, just tries to protect himself from all the damage that is on the board this turn. Starts working on that Tombstone. So this turn I actually misplay a little bit. I actually misplay. I completely I realize that I can't, like I said in the deck tech, we can't deal with Concealing Shroud very well, and that's kind of unfortunate. But we're so far ahead on board that this is kind of a non-existent problem. So this is my misplay. I thought I wanted to move everything down here, and then I realized, well, what if he plays Avalanche and I move behind him? I realized I could not move forward because Bloodborne spell for this. I wasn't going to hit him anyways. What I should have done is backed away completely to play around provoke effects, or I should have been positioned directly in front of the general. The Tombstone should have gone above him. I should have Bloodborne spelled back here instead of up here, and the Battle Pando should be positioned on this side of the board or beneath the Duelyst, etc. Some sort of position that didn't play into Warbird. So it was kind of just I played too fast moment. So he does get this Warbird for value. As soon as it happened, I just kind of went, crap. That's a waste. Missed 5 damage. We're also kind of tightly compacted into this ball of potential things like Aspect of the Mountains and stuff like that, and I didn't play around that at all. So spreading out threats. We already know he's playing Frostburn, so that could have happened anyways. but we're sort of without Spelljammer or Sojourner in our hand at the moment, which is unfortunate. We are running multiple copies, or Lantern Fox even. We're kind of forced to set up for all-ins. I really want to get this Katara play off, but you know, with that Concealing Shroud, it just became a little too difficult, or well, it was impossible. Another Frigid Corona. That's the second one, I believe, that we've seen. Because he played it on us turn 1, and now he played this one. So, Frigid Coronas, the Battle Pando, Fearing Deathstrike Seal, perhaps. Well, this is kind of an all-in by me on this next turn, which is sort of the idea behind having the Spiral Technique. We're going into 8 mana. We know the opponent is playing Concealing Shroud, but we can set it up to be a next turn or the turn after lethal, while also protecting ourselves quite a bit. So the play is to back away from his general with the Heartseeker, so it does not get provoked, because we are going to Phoenix Fire the Tombs, the deal with us, and give ourselves a 60% chance to not have the Katara provoked. The only misplay I did this turn right away was not attacking with my general first, because I really wanted to get this damage in to guarantee Spiral Technique lethal next turn. So this is 4 damage, Inner Focus, another 4 damage. So with this Katara on the board, it's literally a 1 mana 8 damage, you know what I mean? Well, I guess over 2 turns, but we got lucky. We got the 30% where everything could attack. It was a 60% chance that the Katara was going to get in, but since I didn't attack first with my general, we could have missed this opportunity for the Spiral Technique lethal. So important to recognize your misplays, or my misplay in this case. Always hard to play perfectly. So I believe he kind of has to all in and just gamble this turn. Now, the Tombstone positioning is important because he really wants to prevent all forms of damage and also force and occupy 1 tile. So he has to aspect of the Fox to this, and he really wants to get rid of that rather than going into Perfect Protect, which this isn't even a bad play. It's just kind of what he has to do in this scenario. He gets to Dancing Blades this, the Tombstone's preventing the Battle Pando and my general and all this from connecting all at once, but as you see, I cue it in, Spiral Technique, Heartseeker, perfect lethal, and GG. So that's kind of just an example of several of the cards in the deck that seem unorthodox, where we were able to capitalize on the sort of the lockdown mechanic that Duelyst brought to the table, and just go to town. Like, they were at 20 health and then they died in 2 turns, which is very important. I often like to get my opponents to about 18 health or so, or 15 at the, you know, just by like before the turn that I want to kill them, I try and get them down to a factor, or I'm sorry, a multiple of like 3s, and that's because like usually all of the damage that Songhai does is bursts of 3 to 6 to 9. Killing Edge is +4, so it's a little different, but it's just kind of a rule of thumb I have, and I don't know, helps me coordinate my plays better. But from 20 health to 0 in 2 turns, just like that. Yeah, this deck also functions well against the decks that I listed. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave them in the bottom of the video. This one went a little longer, but I thought we had a lot of good content to talk about. Look forward to my next video soon on this topic, and I'll see you guys then. Take care.